Jackson, you're going to be free to go. Life is filled with small victories, and this is a big one. I wish you good luck.
5 innocent convicts reacting to being set free. First, we have Daniel Villegas, a young man who spent almost 2 decades in prison for a double homicide he didn't commit. In 1993, Daniel was just 16 years old when he was arrested and charged with the murder of 2 teenagers in El Paso, Texas. Despite insisting on his innocence, Daniel was convicted and sentenced to life in prison for committing a double homicide. According to reports, he was threatened with violent beatings and a death penalty by an El Paso detective if he did not attest to the crime. Under this coercion, Daniel Villegas signed a confession that had previously been prepared by the detective. A few hours after signing, he tried to retract it, but it was too late. His fate had already been sealed by the court, and he paid for that with 18 years of his life spent behind prison bars. He was charged with 2 counts of murder, and the false confession was the only evidence that the jury had against him. However, they could not reach a verdict, so he was granted a retrial, and this time, the jury found him guilty of a double homicide, and he was handed a life sentence. He was in prison for 18 years until his verdict was finally thrown out, and he was allowed to go home, unbound, but still in line for a 3rd trial. During his release, Villegas started a family of 3 before he was called in for his 3rd trial. During the 3rd trial in 2013, Daniel's conviction was overturned, and it was revealed that the evidence used to convict Daniel had been flawed and that his confession had been coerced by police. After just a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Daniel not guilty on all charges, and he was finally set free.
Verdict Form B. We, the jury, find the defendant Daniel Villegas not guilty of...
Daniel's reaction to being set free was one of pure joy and relief. After spending so many years behind bars, he was overjoyed to be able to finally see his family and friends again. In an interview with CNN, he described the feeling of walking out of prison as surreal and unbelievable. He also expressed gratitude to everyone who supported him throughout his ordeal. Next, we have Devontae Sanford, who was sentenced to 37 to 90 years in prison for the horrific quadruple murder that he did not commit in 2007. At the time, he was only 14 years old. On July 9, 2007, in Battle Creek, Michigan, 4 people were killed in what appeared to be a gang-related shooting. Devontae, who had no prior criminal record, was arrested and charged with the murders, and on the night he was arrested, he was walking outside of his home in his pajamas just 3 blocks away from the crime scene. He was taken to a local police station where he was coerced to give a false confession against himself with leafing questions and facts from his case. His lawyer at that time didn't help matters by convincing him to enter a guilty plea. However, his current lawyer said in the course of their targeting him, they literally fabricated evidence and committed perjury in order to ensure that this young man, that they could get a conviction.
In the course of their targeting him, they literally fabricated evidence and committed perjury in order to ensure that this young man, that they could get a conviction.
Luckily, 3 weeks after his conviction, new evidence in the firm of hitman Vincent Smothers, who was arrested for 12 murders, 4 of which turned out to be those that Sanford was convicted for. A video recording from a gas station surveillance camera showed Devontae at the time of the shooting, miles away from the crime scene, but this video was never presented at his trial. Years after the real murderer was caught, Devontae was still in prison. This lack of action from the Justice Court prompted the Northwestern Center of Wrongfully Convicted Youths to push for the reopening of the case, and Devontae was finally released on the 6th of September 2016. Interestingly, Devontae owes his release to one person, hitman Smothers, and when asked about it, he said, "He protected me, not the cops. The cops took advantage of me. It's because of this man, you know, I'm able to walk and breathe, you know, and just be at peace."
He protected me, not the cops. The cops took advantage of me. It's because of this man. You know, I'm able to walk and breathe and just, you know, be at peace.
However, it turned out that Devontae may have been affected by the time he spent in prison, so he had a hard time getting used to the society again. And in 2018, he was arrested for assault, but this time, there was no hitman to take the heat. Moving on, we have Clemente Aguirre, a Honduran immigrant who spent nearly 15 years on death row for a crime he did not commit. On the 25th of June, 2004, in Altamonte, Florida, 24-year-old Clemente was charged with burglary and first-degree murder of 2 ladies, 68-year-old Carol Barris and 47-year-old Cheryl Williams, who were stabbed to death in their trailer homes in Bartow, Florida. Aguirre had been arrested, and despite maintaining that he had only found the women dead and had tried to help them, he was convicted based on unreliable testimony, flawed forensic evidence, and blood from the dead victims that was found on his clothes and footprints. Then he was sentenced to death.
I didn't do it. I don't kill nobody.
Years later, new DNA testing technology became available, and it was discovered that Samantha, Cheryl's daughter, had been diagnosed with intermittent explosive disorder. Her blood had been found in the bathroom, a few inches away from the crime scene and her mother's body, where the state had previously argued that the murderer cleaned up. They also found a trail of Samantha's blood leading to the bathroom, her mother's blood on the outside of her window, as well as a note from a doctor a few years before the crime where she had promised to kill her mother. In her words, she had said, "I'm gonna fucking kill you if I ever get out of here. I'm gonna fucking kill all of you."
Within inches of the mother's body and in a bathroom where the state argued the killer cleaned up is the daughter's blood, a trail of the daughter's blood going to the bathroom, and then the mother's blood on the outside of the daughter's window. And there's in the doctor's notes, a few years before this happened, where she says to her mother, "I'm gonna kill you if I ever get out of here. I'll kill all of you."
Not to mention that she had also confessed all over the town, saying, "I killed my fucking mother and grandmother, and I'm gonna do it to you too." So, in 2020, after spending exactly 14 years, 4 months, and 19 days in prison, and 10 years and 3 months of that time on death row, Clemente's conviction was overturned, and he was finally set free. During his last trial, he held back tears as he said, "I do know that nobody believed me back then. No one. Besides my mother, nobody believed me. And I thank you for it from the bottom of my heart." Immediately after that, he heads towards his friends and family members to rejoice over his release, and he said, "But today is a brighter day, a newer day, and I got good hopes for the future." Next is the story of Ricky Jackson, a man who spent 39 long years in prison for a murder he did not commit. Ricky was falsely accused of murdering a businessman in Cleveland, Ohio in 1975 when he was just 18 years old. Along with 2 other men, he faced these allegations. Despite his repeated claims of innocence, he was found guilty and sentenced to death. For nearly 4 decades, Ricky languished in prison, all the while maintaining his innocence. It wasn't until 2011 that Eddie Vernon, who was 12 years old when he testified against Ricky, came forward and recanted his testimony, admitting that the police had coerced him into identifying Ricky as one of the killers. This revelation prompted a thorough re-examination of the case, which ultimately led to Ricky's exoneration in 2014. He received $1 million from the state in compensation for his unjustified conviction, as well as an additional $2.65 million for the income he had lost during his time in prison. Finally, we have Kirsten Lobato, a young woman from Las Vegas. She was wrongfully convicted of murder in 2006 and sentenced to 13 to 45 years in prison. However, after years of fighting for justice, Kirsten was finally found innocent and set free in 2021. Kirsten's story began in 2001 when she was just 18 years old. She was accused of brutally murdering a homeless man despite having no motive, weapon, or connection to the crime. The prosecution built its case on a false confession that Kirsten allegedly made during police interrogation. However, the confession was coerced out of her, and Kirsten maintained her innocence throughout the trial. Despite the lack of evidence, Kirsten was found guilty and sent to prison. She spent years fighting for a retrial, and her case gained national attention as her supporters rallied behind her. Finally, in 2019, a judge ruled that Kirsten's conviction was based on false evidence and ordered a new trial after Kirsten had already served 16 years behind bars. The new trial began in 2021, and it was a turning point in Kirsten's case. The defense team presented new evidence that debunked the prosecution's theory and highlighted the flaws in the investigation. They confirmed that Kirsten was about 3 hours away from the crime scene with her family when the victim was found dead, and finally, after weeks of testimony, Kirsten was declared innocent and was set free. When Kirsten heard the declaration, she hugged her family and supporters as joy and gratitude washed over her. In her words, she said, "I feel overwhelmed. I feel excited. I feel grateful. I'm so happy." However, Lobato filed a lawsuit against the Las Vegas Police Department for the injustice and the number of years she spent in jail. And that's a wrap. Watching these 5 innocent convicts reacting to being set free has been an emotional roller coaster. We can only imagine the overwhelming sense of relief and joy they must be feeling right now after spending years behind bars for a crime they didn't commit. This video has served as a reminder of the importance of a fair justice system and the devastating consequences of wrongful convictions. We hope that by sharing these stories, we can raise awareness and encourage change. Thank you for watching and joining us in celebrating the freedom of these brave individuals. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.